A man was sleepwalking on a small boat early in the morning, heading towards the restroom. He had only taken a few steps when suddenly, the boat flipped over due to extreme turbulence. It was dark all around, and water began to fill the ship, which terrified him. Fearing death, he desperately tried to find a way out, but the doors were locked, and the boat continued to sink into the sea until it hit the ocean floor. Perhaps it was his fate that there was a small space in the boat where water couldn't reach because it had flipped over. There was only a mattress and a bottle of Coke there, but now, how long could he survive? One beautiful day, a small tugboat named Sunken set out from the coast of Nigeria on a mission. Its task was to rescue an oil tanker filled with petrol named Chevron, which was stuck in the Atlantic Ocean. The tanker had 12 crew members aboard who were seasoned mariners, used to the challenges of sea travel, so being stuck was routine for them. However, those on Sunken had no idea what was about to happen to them. On the tugboat, 11 Nigerian crew members and 1 Ukrainian captain closed the cabin doors as night fell and prepared to sleep. During the night, as everyone was sleeping, it rained heavily, and dangerous waves began to strike their boat. Around 4:30 in the morning, Harrison Okin, who was the ship's cook, woke up to prepare breakfast for the others. Harrison was an experienced seaman. Just as he was heading to the washroom, a huge wave struck the boat and flipped it over. This caused Harrison to fall out of the washroom, and he watched as the hull and cabin quickly began to fill with water. The vessel began to sink quickly. In the darkness, a frightened Harrison frantically waved his hands around searching for safety, but all the doors were locked. The boat had sunk, and they were 30 kilometers away from the coast of Nigeria. Somehow, Harrison managed to make his way to the boat's officer cabin, which had an open door but was already filled with water. Nearby, he spotted a small room, which seemed to be the officer's bathroom. Here, a miracle occurred. The ship had sunk 30 meters below the sea, yet a small air bubble formed in the washroom where Harrison was. This tiny air pocket was only about a meter in size, which was just enough for someone to survive for a while. In the darkness, a frightened Harrison began to think about his situation. He had no idea what had happened to his crew members, but he thought that perhaps they had managed to save themselves, and that he was the only one trapped in this predicament. The water level was rising slowly. Alone in the pitch darkness, he realized he had to find a way to save himself. He left the air pocket to look for things that might help him and found some tools and 2 mattresses. He managed to arrange the mattresses in such a way that most of his body could stay out of the water, as the extremely cold water could cause him to die of hypothermia. On top of this, he was only wearing a pair of boxers. Amidst the darkness and noise, he felt severe hunger and thirst, and the only thing he had to eat or drink was a bottle of Coke. Harrison knew he had to escape quickly. The longer he waited, the oxygen in the air pocket would deplete, and carbon dioxide levels would increase, making it impossible to breathe. He tried to exit the chamber using a rope, but couldn't make it out. Now, there was nothing more he could do. Shivering from the cold, he began to pray. His wedding anniversary was just a few days away. He thought about his wife, friends, and family, but no progress was made. 2 days had passed, and he had no idea if help would come. Suddenly, he started hearing sounds as if something was scraping against the boat. This made him even more frightened, and he began to breathe heavily. His lungs were now filling with more CO2 than oxygen. Meanwhile, a team of South African divers from a nearby oil rig was sent to investigate the sunken boat. This wasn't a rescue mission. They were only supposed to inspect the boat. These divers were from a global company, DCN, and had been tasked with recovering bodies from the ship. Since all the doors of the ship were locked, they assumed that no crew members could have survived. 4 bodies had already been recovered, and Harrison's family had been informed that he was no longer alive. No one had any idea that inside the boat, someone was praying for a rescue before it was too late. If Harrison had been alive, he might have heard the sounds of the rescue team that arrived 60 hours after the boat sank. He could have heard the boats moving in the water, the sound of an anchor dropping, or the paddling of divers, giving him hope that help had arrived. In reality, the Sunken was a large tugboat, and Harrison was trapped in a small chamber, unknown to the divers who did not expect any survivors. However, Harrison then heard noises that made him believe someone had come to rescue him. He desperately needed to alert them that he was alive. Using a hammer, he repeatedly struck the boat, hoping the noise would alert someone, but the divers were too far away, and it seemed they were moving further away. They were actually exploring every part of the boat to find more bodies. Then, one of the divers, Nico Van Heerden, approached the officer's cabin, started looking around, and came up to the washroom. When Harrison saw the light flickering in the darkness, he knew he couldn't miss this chance. He went back into the water and approached the rescuer, gently touching Nico Van Heerden's head to avoid startling him. Nico was initially frightened, but when he grabbed Harrison's hand, he pulled him closer. Harrison then led Nico to the air pocket so he could see him clearly. Overwhelmed with joy, Harrison began to cry, hardly believing that someone had come to save him. The rescue had come at a critical moment because Harrison's air pocket was filled with carbon dioxide, and he could not have survived much longer due to the onset of hypercapnia, a condition caused by inhaling too much carbon dioxide. Although the air bubble had kept him alive, it could not sustain him much longer. He had also inhaled a significant amount of nitrogen, and his body was deteriorating due to being in the water. Normally, when we breathe, our bodies use oxygen and produce carbon dioxide, but nitrogen remains unchanged in the body. At regular surface pressure, only a small amount of oxygen and nitrogen dissolves in our blood and tissues. However, as you go deeper into the water, the pressure on the body increases, leading to more nitrogen and oxygen dissolving into the bloodstream. While the oxygen is used by the tissues, nitrogen forms bubbles. If you ascend directly to the surface from deep water, the gas is released rapidly, similar to opening a soda bottle, and this situation can be lethal for the body. Because of this issue, divers ascend slowly from the water so that the gas can be released gently. If an immediate ascent is necessary, they can enter a pressurized chamber where the pressure is normalized. Harrison could not be directly brought out of the water for this reason. He could have died from decompression sickness, also known as the bends. When Alex Gibbs, a life support technician on the rescue boat, learned that someone was alive in the sunken boat, he and his team quickly set up a room with an air hose to provide Harrison with fresh air. However, another problem was that Harrison was heavily saturated with carbon dioxide, making it essential to give him a mixture of oxygen and helium. Harrison was fitted with a special diving suit and a helmet to maintain his internal pressure and prevent him from bending. But due to the long duration he spent in the water, he had to make several decompression stops before he could surface. Everyone was amazed that Harrison remained composed as they brought him up. However, as they ascended, Harrison began to lose consciousness, but ultimately survived. Once above water, he was immediately placed in a pressurized diving bell and then transferred to a decompression chamber. The following 2 days were still some of the toughest of his life. After this ordeal, Harrison began to experience nightmares. His skin was severely peeling, and despite eating, he could not satisfy his hunger. He was also informed that none of his crew members had survived. 10 bodies had been recovered, but 1 was still missing. Alex Gibbs took great care of Harrison during his recovery, ensuring he was fed, changing his sheets, administering medicine, taking him to doctors, and arranging meetings with officers and managers to assist in every way possible. 3 days later, Harrison was finally released from the decompression chamber. He was incredibly grateful to be alive, but the trauma persisted, and he continued to have nightmares where he felt like he was drowning. He vowed never to go near the ocean again. 9 years later, Alex Gibbs was on a diving job when he met a diver. It was Harrison, who had become a commercial diver. Initially, Harrison was terrified, but he wanted to conquer his fears, and that drive helped him become a certified commercial diver. After completing his training, Harrison received a diploma. Now, Harrison is the king of the sea, and the ocean is his world. He is so comfortable that he can dive up to 50 meters deep. He always expresses gratitude to the team that saved his life, and often reflects on the moments he spent trapped under the sea. Harrison's story teaches us that no matter the situation, hope is the one thing that can help us overcome even the most difficult circumstances.